Hey everyone, Self-Aware School is back in session. I am over the moon to have Michelle with us here today. So, Michelle, I've given you a little bit of an introduction in the intro to the podcast, but you're our guest teacher today. So, can you tell us a little bit of a story about your background and what led you to care so deeply about self-advocacy and finding your voice?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm excited to have this conversation today. My name is Michelle Steiner. I live in the United States with my husband Ron and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow.
Love it.
I, yes, I am a writer, speaker, photographer, and paraeducator. I work in a school with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I'm also a writer and photographer at my blog called Michelle's Mission, where I write about my life with having a learning disability. And on that, I use a lot of nature metaphors and I feature my photography as well. And the inspiration that I get from working with my students and with working at my blog comes from my own experience with having a learning disability. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability that affects how I perform math. I also have visual perception issues that affect my brain, not my eyes, and I have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands. And it all began whenever I was in kindergarten. My teacher noticed that I was really struggling in the classroom to be able to count, tie
Mhm.
my shoes. Anything math related was really hard. And I was very fortunate that my teacher saw all this because we just had legislation that was passed a few years saying that students with disabilities in the classroom had a right to be there and they had to have their needs met. And people didn't know a whole lot about learning disabilities. So I was really blessed that my teacher saw that and
Yeah.
yeah. And sure enough, after I was tested, I indeed have one. They didn't give it an exact name to it at that time. They just called it learning disability.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we had that. And then, yeah, so that's where it all began.
Okay, awesome. And what about self-advocacy and needing to find your voice? Because, like you say, it's amazing that you had a teacher that was observant enough and supportive enough that they didn't just write you
Yeah.
off and what have you. But how has that led now to you feeling like you've needed to advocate for yourself and that you're so passionate about that self-advocacy piece and being able to find your voice when, you're in a situation like yours?
One of the things is people don't know that I have a disability because they
Mm,
can't see it. So
yeah.
it's really up to me to be able to advocate. And I learned how to do that throughout my years of school. When I was in school, I had a lot of support services. I had to get extra time on tests. I had to have tests read aloud to me. I needed tutoring, and I knew math was not my strong suit. But the real question became, what am I going to do after high school? I knew I wanted to go to college, but I knew it was going to be hard. And I had other people that were trying to tell me that I couldn't do it. And they were giving me ideas like, why don't you go to a trade school? And nothing wrong with that, but nothing interested me. So I had to use my voice and advocate for myself. My mom and dad did it for me until I was old enough to say, no, I don't want to go that direction. I think this direction is better for myself.
Yeah.
And that was one of the key things was being able to speak up. Because if I don't speak up, then somebody else is either going to make that decision
Mm.
or they're not going to get it. And I had to do that all throughout college with people telling me I couldn't do that, including a psychiatrist. I had professors who didn't quite understand why I needed accommodations, and I had to speak up and use my voice there. And after I graduated from university, I also at the job my jobs I have still have to use my voice. I have to be the person that says when I work with my students, I can help my kids out with anything except for math. And
Hmm.
I have to tell that to the principals I work with. I have to tell it to any new teacher that I get because people just look at me and think, you're an adult. You look quote unquote normal. You should be able to do that. And even with the kids. And why I'm so passionate about that with my students that have disabilities, especially, is all my students someday are going to graduate. And I hope every dream that they have comes true. But for so many of them, their disabilities are going to be there and they need to learn how to be an advocate for themselves at that time. So sometimes part of my job might be modeling how to do that. And
Yeah.
I might have a student that's afraid, but we'll go through that together because I know how important it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though people might be in different situations necessarily from
Hmm.
yours, I guess what you've really learned is to like trust yourself, trust what it is that you want, and be willing, even if you feel like you're in a situation where other people might either judge you or think they know what's best for you, it's having that absolute conviction in, no, this is who I am, this is what I want, and I'm feeling brave enough to say no, that this is, and this can be applied to
Right,
all sorts, can't it? It can be in relationships, in health situations, in business or career decisions, all
right.
sorts of things, couldn't it? And
Definitely.
I think a lot of the women that I speak to, just in my daily life, but also women that I work with, clients that I work with from a coaching perspective, sometimes struggle to advocate for themselves, for their dreams. That's what you say. You want
Mhm.
those dreams to come true. Like, especially when it comes to work or business decisions or education or just asking for what they need. Why do you think it's such a common challenge, particularly for women? If you think it is particularly a challenge for women, and I know that you and I have spoken about this before, particularly for women from working class or like non-traditional backgrounds, because that's something, wasn't it, we chatted about before the
Right.
podcast. Why do you think it's such a struggle for women to advocate for themselves and say what it is that they need or want?
I think a lot of times with women, they expect women to just go on and just do what they're told to do. We're
Mm,
conditioned to do a lot of that with that blind obedience and to listen to what other people say, or sometimes that might be perceived if you're going to speak up for yourself, that might be yelling or might be rude. And that's not. If you present it it's still important to be kind,
mm,
but there's a way that you can be assertive and still speak for what you need
yeah.
and not be somebody that's rude. So I think sometimes that's more where we just expect that, where a woman's just going to take that backseat role. And that can sometimes lead to maybe things that we don't always want to have to do. So I think that's an important thing. And then just
Mm,
sometimes people will say, why would you question that? I think maybe from past generations, a lot of times women might think that's just the way things are. And we never
mm.
really think, well, is this what I want? Is this what I believe is right? Whereas with men, I think sometimes that is more acceptable for them to feel that way.
Yeah, and I think there's the piece around like women seeming too pushy or too emotional
Yes.
or being too demanding,
Yes.
things like that. Whereas women are supposed to be agreeable or,
Mhm.
let's say, they are getting emotional or that someone's going to call them an angry woman or something, as opposed to, let's say,
Yes.
just standing up and being able to speak about what the things that we want and the things that we think, or we
Right.
worry what people are going to think, that women can't have these like necessarily strong voices or opinions. If we struggle, I think, with self-doubt, one pattern that I do see a lot with women that I work with as well is like that struggle to make decisions and like second guessing yourself. And I guess there's that element
Hmm.
of if I'm self-advocating, I'm using my voice, what if somebody questions me? What if I can't answer something? Do you know what I mean? That kind of
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
Mm.
I agree.
And what do you think people often misunderstand when it comes to like self-advocacy? So when they hear that term, what do you think they misunderstand about what that means and the kind of people who might need to do that self-advocacy?
Right. A lot of times, especially with kids, with teaching them how to advocate, we think that somebody with that's an advocate is that person that's standing there yelling. And that is not definitely always the case. And it's certainly they're learning how to advocate is that art of learning to say what you need in that firm voice, but also not screaming, not so a lot of times people just think you're this pushy person that's out there that hates the world or hates life, and that's just not true either. It means that you're able to say, this is what I need, and to be able to work along with that as well. But yeah, I
Mm.
think a lot of people think that. A lot of other people might think someone who's an advocate might be either somebody who really is somebody powerful and is a well-known figure. And sometimes that's the case, but other times it might just be a person that's ordinary or that's in their community or just in their workplace or their school. And they're speaking up for what they need and maybe what for somebody else does. I also think sometimes people think that somebody who advocates also on the flip side is somebody who doesn't want to work or somebody who wants to isn't motivated and wants to take the easy way. And that's not the truth either. It's the person that is trying to advocate is the one that's not necessarily trying to get an unfair advantage. They're trying to level the playing field so they can be in society where they're accepted and their needs are met and they're able to do everything that a person without a disability can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually leads on quite nicely to my next question, which was around like how you define self-advocacy, like what that looks like in everyday life, like everyday moments of needing to like advocate for yourself, for your dreams, for the things that you want, versus not just those big bold moments when you're having a discussion with people or you're writing a letter or you're making a speech, or what does self-advocacy mean to you? How would you define it in those little moments and the big ones?
Sometimes it can be something as simple as writing to somebody, a politician that you know about an issue that's important to you. That can be a big one that people can do that anybody can. Sometimes I could be, I'm at work and I get with a new teacher and I'm not able to help a student with that and somebody doesn't understand the disability. So that might be something I have to learn how to go up and say, I have a learning disability in math. I can't help them with this, but this is what I can do. And that shows how I can be more of an asset rather than a liability with that,
Mm,
because there are some things that I can do at my job that others can't do on my staff. I know what it's like for a lot of my students to be able to feel where they're at, and that gives me that empathy. But there's also some things that no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be able to do. I also think it's important too. I've had to advocate like with I'm not able to just some of the planning that I've had to do in my life. I'm
mm,
not able to drive. So my husband and I, we really discussed where we were going to live to be in a central location where I
mm,
could walk places and he could take me where I need to go as well. And I have a sweet coworker that takes me home. But that was me reaching out and asking for that. Sometimes it can be just everyday things if I'm at the store and I have to be that kind of, I have to just figure out. I'll ask my husband. Yeah, because it can be hard if we have just with if you give me a credit card or a debit card, I don't know how much we're spending. So sometimes it's just looking for those ways to be able to do that or to ask questions like, where is this at? And to just be there and to just be able to use my voice.
mm. What I'm hearing there is like a sense of honesty, both in both ways, as in it's like honesty and ownership of where you are or what you might need help with
Yeah.
or what your current circumstances are, but also being knowing and being aware of your strengths as well. You were saying like
Hmm.
about that thing, and I think again that applies to so many women because as we know, this lesson and this podcast is about becoming your happiest and confident self, and whatever that looks like to you. And like I said, being able to self-advocate is being, like I said, absolutely honest about both your desires, but where you might
Yeah.
struggle, but being able to be absolutely convicted in your strengths and your desires at the same
Hmm.
time. And so it's being able to have those honest conversations with people and having the strength to speak up and say, this is what I want, this is where I might be limited, or this might be what I'm going through, or this is the
Yes.
condition that I
Hmm.
have. This is the block that I'm having, but this is what I can offer. This is what I want. This is
Yeah.
what I can do, and having both that honesty and that conviction in what you do bring, like I say, it allows you to have those more come from a more powerful place when you're having those conversations. Would you agree?
I agree 100% because I think the world needs all kinds of different thinkers. I may not be great at doing math or things like that, but I'm not doing somebody's taxes. I'm certainly not working in a bank, but there's other things that I'm able to do. I can do that role of working with students. I can write, I can take pictures. And I just think that everybody has a role. And when we can really look at ourselves and we can say,
Mm,
oh, this is what I'm good at, and I'm going to go forth and do that because that makes me feel more empowered when I do that rather than something that I can't do. And I think that's just so important because we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and when we get to that place where I can acknowledge that, but I can also fill it with things I am good at, people
yeah,
do feel
exactly.
happier.
Yeah,
Yeah, and more confident.
awesome. And we spoke about when we spoke before the episode what we wanted to cover. You shared about you spoke about overcoming your fears and imposter
Mhm.
syndrome because obviously when
Yes.
so many people tell you that you can't do something and then you start doing it and then basically just navigating those systems that weren't necessarily built with everybody in mind. So what mindset shifts or approaches helped keep you going even when you heard those negative voices, things that perhaps others who are in different types of situations but might also be struggling with that fear and imposter syndrome and wanting
Mhm.
to do the things that they want to do. Yeah, what mindset shifts or approaches helped you?
I can remember I had a student teacher when I was in high school that told me you can go to college because you know how to study. And that was one of the first encouraging things that I heard around that was
Hmm.
somebody. She told me about students that classmates that she knew at university that had that. And I didn't hear anything from that point. Most of the research was, or the books that were written were by white men that had dyslexia or other reading disabilities. So I didn't know anybody who was female or anybody that struggled with math and was going to college and knew that. So that really opened up a lot for me. And whenever I was at school and I was really struggling, sometimes that was the voice that I heard in my
Mm.
head that I could do it because I knew how to study. I also have been blessed with wonderful parents that were able to support me while I was in school. And they encouraged me that I could do it. And they just said, try to figure out what your professor wants you to do. So I think that was definitely a key factor. And they always wanted me to be independent. That was another thing. And I was also have been blessed to find some great friends. And the thing that really always impresses me is they can't fix that I have a disability. But sometimes when we would go out on the weekends and I was really struggling in a class, they could make me laugh. And I think that was important too, just to know that you have that support and that person that's in your corner. And my husband has also been really great with a lot of that too, just
Mm.
definitely being supportive and loving with that. So really have been blessed to have some great people in my life to encourage me.
So it sounds like one of those big mindset shifts is one, finding your tribe, finding the people that support you and
Hmm.
believe in you, and making sure you spend time with them.
Yes.
But also holding on to those bits of encouragement because I think naturally as humans, we're built, we could get five compliments in a row, but if someone
Hmm.
gives us that one like insult or thing that knocks our confidence. Biologically, we're made to focus on those things because they're like a threat. They're a threat to our survival and our safety.
Yes.
But I think what you're saying is find people, surround yourself with people who believe in you, who back
Hmm.
you, who make you feel good, and make sure that you're focusing on the encouragement rather than the either the fear,
Yes.
the fear voice, or
Exactly.
people that perhaps don't understand you the best as best as the other people can as well.
Great.
Yeah. No, that's lovely. And one thing that actually came up for me as we were speaking, especially about this self-advocacy thing, I don't know if it's the same for you across the pond, but one of the things that's happening a lot for the women, especially women my age, like perimenopausal, early 40s, is there's a lot of women who are being late diagnosed with ADHD and they're finding it difficult, or they're seeing other women being self-diagnosed with ADHD, recognizing some of those symptoms in themselves and thinking, should I go forward? Should I explore a diagnosis? Or, like I say, they've got one and they don't know how to then advocate for themselves, whether that's in the healthcare system or whether that's with friends and
Hmm.
family around them. What would you have any advice for women that are going through or find themselves in that kind of situation?
I would say bring it up with somebody if that if you think that is like they now they do diagnose people with that. So if you think
Mm,
about that, finding that way and getting answers and seeing if there is any correlation with that. And sometimes that could be a surprise too. I know my limited hand dexterity was a shock because and then finally it was like wow, when they found out I had that's why things fell into my hands. I had no idea. Everybody just said I was clumsy and we figured it was learning
mm,
disability related. But when I heard that diagnosis, everything made sense. So I think sometimes just speaking out, speaking with your physician, speaking with somebody about that and seeing if there is a with that. And also people didn't know a lot about that. My mom
mm,
has said from years past, she goes, I think I might have a math learning disability too, because I can't do numbers and they didn't test for that. And I've had a lot of other people who have told me that have been older and they've obviously, I don't know if they were there, if they do or they don't, but they've been able to find strategies to be able to cope in life. But I think just speaking up about that and seeing
Mm.
if that is something that can be explored, because yeah, that could be something.
Yeah, like the getting the answers is more important than worry that you're going to get dismissed. Because I think I get the sense that's what a lot of
Yes.
women think.
Mhm.
Oh, the doctor will just think I'm jumping on the bandwagon of all these people who think they've been late diagnosed. But it's better to go and know that you've
Right.
spoken up and ask that question
Exact. Yeah.
than not. Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
And you've also mentioned when we chatted before that you found writing a really powerful way to find your voice and work out how to express yourself. Can you talk us through how that works for you or how writing can help women clarify what it is that they want and advocate for themselves more confidently?
I think writing has really given me a voice. It really helped me, especially throughout my school years, whenever I was being bullied for having a disability. And books, I love to read and I love to write. But when I really started seeing a lot of that power is whenever I finally got the courage to write about having a learning disability. Everybody told me in my writing group that I should write about it, and I was really still embarrassed about that, so I didn't write about it. I wrote some bad poetry and other things I wouldn't want to share today. But I can remember when I got diagnosed with having limited hand dexterity, I finally got that courage to write about it. And there was a call on the mighty for what's a seemingly easy task for others, but it's hard for you with your disability. And I had such a great response after that that encouraged me to write more articles for them and for other
Mm,
places and to have my blog. But that's my voice. And there was another time I was at a writing group and there was a person that I couldn't forgive that for things that happened. And I put that person in a story and I
mm,
said everything that I wanted to say to that person. And I can remember reading it out loud and I had other people say, that was my experience with that, with a person like that.
mm,
And I was so glad because I could finally forgive that person that hurt me. And when that person passed and I was at her funeral, I no longer felt any anger towards her. I was so glad that I was able to patch things up before that too, and we could have a relationship before that person passed. And I just think if I didn't write about that, all those words would just be trapped inside me. And
mm.
whenever I write, that's what gives me that voice, and that is so healing for me to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. So it's very much about self-expression then, isn't it? I guess being able
Hmm.
to put those emotions down on paper so that either
Hmm.
it allows, and like I say, reading it aloud is quite powerful as well, isn't it? Whether you're on your own or with people, it feels like those feelings that you have are being brought to light.
Hmm.
And it can also help you think about ways in which you might want to say things or express things. So
Yes.
lovely. Okay, Michelle, so we're coming up to the section where I ask our guest teachers, what's the main takeaway that you would love for somebody to come away from this when you think about being able to advocate for yourself, becoming more brave, advocating for yourself, like I say, whether that's in business, in their life, in relationships, wherever it might be. If there was one thing you would love for them to remember to take away from this conversation about being able to, yeah, about this lesson, what would you want it to
Yes.
be?
I would like people to know what they want and to be able to find a way to do. That would probably be the best thing. And yeah, just to know everything that they want to do in life, find a way to do it, and to use their voice to be able to get there. And it might look different for everybody. Some people are able to sing about it, other people can write about it, other people can be able to talk about that. It's just finding that way that you're able to know what you want to do and be able
Mhm.
to find a way to do it.
So know what it is that you want to do, find a way
Hmm.
that you want to do it, and then use your voice to
Yes.
advocate for yourself to make it happen in whatever way works for you.
Yes.
Okay. And we also give our listeners, our students, a bit of homework, as it were. I always ask our guests to give them some kind of simple, practical exercise that they could do this week to start advocating for themselves, whether it say it's something small in a partner, in a family situation, even if they feel nervous or unsure. So is there anything that you would like to set as an example, as a task, or something practical that people can do to start putting this into practice?
One of the first things that I would tell somebody to do is to think of one situation that you need to tackle or is giving you difficulty. Think about that situation, know what that problem is, and think about a solution that you can do to make it better and be able to put that into practice and to ask that person or to express that.
Okay, so you're saying that identify something that's causing them a
Hmm.
problem, think about what
Yeah.
that is, and take some
Hmm.
time to think about what a solution could be. So take some time to
Yep.
sit down, brainstorm, think about it,
Hmm.
rather than letting it just fester
Yes.
and stay in
Hmm.
there and roll around in your mind. So
Exactly.
something that everybody needs to do. But lovely. Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been such an interesting conversation. Like I say, I think a lot of what you've said resonates so far, even if your experience
Hmm.
might be different to other people's. So I think women do struggle to advocate for themselves, whether it's through self-doubt or not wanting to be perceived a certain way. But ultimately, that's how we achieve our dreams. That's how we live a life that's truly ours and truly what we want it to be, is being super
Hmm.
clear and honest about who that is, who we are, like you say, our strengths, our weaknesses, and being willing to use our voice to make sure that happens. And yeah, I'm so glad that you did that and that you've made a life and a career that you love.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure
Thank you.
today too.
Any other messages or anything else that you would like to share with the listeners before we end the lesson?
I would just love to tell people that success doesn't always come in the package that you expect, but sometimes it comes in something even better.
Great message. Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. So there you have it, awesome women. I hope you enjoyed that episode. What I love about Michelle's perspective is how human and realistic it is. Like, self-advocacy isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about knowing what you need, being honest about your strengths and your limitations, and being brave enough to use your voice anyway. We're all allowed to dream big and achieve the things that we want, no matter who we are. So whether that's in education, work, healthcare, or your personal life, advocating for yourself is an act of self-worth. So if today's episode made you reflect on where you've been staying quiet or playing small or putting your needs second, I hope it also reminded you that your voice matters and it's never too late to start using it. So I'll share in the show notes the link to Michelle's blog so you can go and check out what she does, and her Facebook pages so you can see what an amazing advocate is like in practice. And if you are ready to build deeper confidence, clarity, courage in your own life, and then how to advocate for yourself, you're always welcome to explore working with me, whether that's through my one-to-one coaching or by joining the Self-Worth Project membership. I'm starting a beta run in mid to late January, and I'm looking for 15 women to join that beta around a discounted price to change their lives and their business. So all the links are in the show notes for anything that you need. But until next time, keep showing up, keep backing yourself, and remember, the more that you know your worth, the easier it becomes to speak up for it. Have a great day.